Order 66 functions as a structural collapse. Not a singular event, it marks the moment when the narrative shifts from hope to consequence. The Jedi represent institutional stability in the Star Wars universe. They are visual and thematic shorthand for order. Peace and moral accountability, removing them, removes the foundation of the galaxy's ethical framework. Star Wars does not just lose characters, it loses a worldview. The impact works because the audience experiences years of narrative investment. Before the tragedy occurs, the films introduce the Jedi as myth, then Clone Wars reframes them as people. The audience forms attachment through repetition, familiarity, and shared experience. Tragedy only resonates when loss interrupts established continuity. Order 66 destroys continuity on every level. The tragedy operates through narrative contrast. The Jedi fought to preserve peace, yet were destroyed during a war, fought in the name of peace. Irony amplifies emotional consequence. The audience witnesses an institution dedicated to peace-deploying armies, and that contradiction becomes the mechanism of its downfall. Order 66 concludes that contradiction through collapse. Clone Wars recontextualizes every Jedi death by giving each character personality, daily habits, flaws, humor, and vulnerability. The tragedy hits because viewers recognize individual loss, not abstract casualty lists. When characters are humanized through lived experience, the removal becomes personal, not symbolic. Personal loss produces deeper emotional impact than narrative loss. The clones make the moment unique because they embody trust built through shared risk. They trained with the Jedi, protected them, and depended on them. The betrayal is devastating, not because of violence, but because of intimacy. Betrayal requires trust. Order 66 weaponizes trust into tragedy. The audience experiences dramatic irony. Through pre-existing knowledge, viewers know the Jedi are doomed. The characters do not. Watching the inevitable approach, without the ability to prevent it, produces narrative dread. Dread accumulates impact, which prepares the emotional collapse before the event even occurs. The event is irreversible. No narrative in the timeline can undo the destruction. Once the Jedi fall, the galaxy transitions into authoritarian rule. Without resistance, this permanence removes the possibility of revised emotional payoff. Tragedies that cannot be undone carry more gravity than tragedies that offer redemption. Later, Order 66 is constructed across multiple mediums. Film series and supplementary material all contribute to the impact. Fragmentation across mediums builds depth by widening perspective, not repetition. The tragedy becomes layered because different stories show different angles of the same event. Narrative echoing amplifies emotional weight. Order 66 is not just execution, it is extermination of ideology. The galaxy does not simply lose people, it loses philosophy. Archives are burned, temples are destroyed, and cultural lineage disappears. The emotional impact expands from individual loss to cultural extinction. Cultural extinction outweighs character death in narrative consequence. The moment resonates because it combines large-scale collapse with personal relationships, macro scale. Events rarely connect emotionally. Order 66 connects because it pairs mass destruction with intimate betrayal. Viewers are forced to process trauma as both system failure and personal loss. The structure is built on inevitability. The audience watches the Jedi walk toward doom with confidence, still believing they are winning. Narrative structure weaponizes certainty against the viewer. Characters remain unaware until the final moment. Inevitability creates emotional pressure that intensifies collapse. Future stories cannot replicate the impact because they lack equivalent narrative positioning. Order 66 sits at the hinge point of the saga, where the narrative transitions from Republic to Empire, from hope to oppression, from Jedi legacy to Jedi extinction. No future story holds that level of structural consequence. The tragedy is foundational. Once Order 66 exists, every future loss becomes a symptom of that collapsed. Tragedy cannot exceed its foundation. Once a narrative defines its lowest emotional point, future events can echo the impact, but never exceed it. Resonance diminishes when tied to repetition. Order 66 is singular because no future narrative can remove a system that has already fallen. The saga cannot lose the Jedi again, the collapse cannot repeat, and tragedy cannot replicate the impact of the first, irreversible fall. Narrative gravity cannot be recreated once it has already executed its full weight. Order 66 delivers emotional intensity because it weaponizes trust rather than conflict. The clones do not betray the Jedi after losing faith in them, they are forced to betray them, against their will. Emotional devastation occurs when characters act contrary to their identities. The clones follow orders because they have no choice. And because of that, the tragedy carries an element of helplessness. The event shows that loyalty can be erased without consent. The Jedi and clones built connection through shared sacrifice, not symbolic alignment. Their relationships formed through daily interaction, planning missions, eating together, and relying on each other. The betrayal lands harder because it breaks routines, not just alliances. Order 66 overturns familiarity by turning habit into horror. Characters behave as they always have until the moment they cannot. The emotional weight lies in that instant transition from partnership to programmed obedience. Every perspective depicts loss differently, and that multiplicity expands emotional resonance. Obi-Wan loses Anakin twice, first to darkness and then to the Empire. Ahsoka loses an entire family of soldiers she trusted. Yoda loses the future he spent centuries preparing for, and every clone loses personal identity when programming overrides. Agency 1 event fractures entire character networks from different emotional angles, producing lasting devastation. The tragedy grows heavier because silence follows immediately after there are no funerals. No time to mourn, no recognition from the galaxy. The Jedi disappear without acknowledgement, and the clones return to work as if nothing happened. Emotional weight increases when grief goes unspoken. Catharsis never arrives, and the event becomes a wound. The story never allows to close. Order 66 redefines the tone of the entire franchise, and narratives that follow cannot return to optimism without referencing the loss. Every surviving Jedi carries trauma forward into subsequent stories. The galaxy shifts from exploration to caution. Every character arc intersects the memory of what was lost when tragedy reshapes the narrative's emotional environment. That tragedy cannot be replaced. The power of the moment lies in the fact that the tragedy was preventable. The Jedi do not fall because their enemies overpower them. They fall because they fail to recognize the threat and fail to adapt. Their institutional rigidity blinds them to manipulation. Tragedy rooted in avoidable error resonates longer because it forces reflection. Instead of acceptance, the audience recognizes that the end was not fate, it was consequence. The revelation that the clones were engineered for betrayal reframes their entire existence. Every victory and every bond becomes retroactively tragic. Their affection was real, but their fate was predetermined. Order 66 forces the audience to reinterpret past scenes as part of a long, controlled path. Emotional weight increases when a story retroactively reframes past meaning. Clone hesitation. After the Order shows emotional residue, they are not depicted as villains, but as soldiers stripped of autonomy. A soldier lowering his weapon or hesitating before firing communicates internal conflict without dialogue. Emotional impact intensifies when characters fight against programming, even if they cannot break it. Tragedy becomes layered when victim and perpetrator occupy the same body. Erasure elevates the tragedy beyond death. The Jedi are not remembered as heroes. They are erased from records labelled as traitors and buried by propaganda. The emotional grief extends beyond the characters into the narrative world. Trauma becomes cultural, not individual. When a tragedy affects memory, it becomes irreversible on both emotional and historical levels. Order 66 eliminates future possibility, which is where the deepest sadness lies. Tragedy is not about losing what exists, it is about losing what could have existed. Every lost Jedi represents future stories that will never happen. Apprentices that will never be trained. Discoveries that will never be made. Potential is destroyed, and potential cannot be mourned through closure, because closure depends on completion. The audience experiences the story from two layered perspectives, first with hope while watching episodes before the fall, and then with dread after knowing the outcome. Clone Wars forces viewers to relive every mission with the knowledge that the bonds being built will soon be shattered. Emotional intensity increases when viewers cannot change a future they already know. Subsequent Star Wars tragedies cannot replicate the same effect because they occur within a world already shaped by loss. Once innocence is removed, it cannot be removed again. Order 66 marks the emotional threshold of the franchise. Future tragedies are measured against it, but cannot exceed it because they occur in a world emotionally defined by this event. Order 66 hits harder because it transforms characters who survive, rather than characters who die. Trauma shapes future identity, and every surviving Jedi becomes a living monument to catastrophe. The saga carries emotional weight not through death counts, but through lingering consequence. When characters build new paths under the weight of past failure, the tragedy stays present. There will never be another sad moment. Like Order 66, because it is not a scene. It is a pivot point. It rewrites the emotional rules of the franchise. Destroys an institution, redefines character trajectories, and changes the meaning of every story that follows loss, becomes part of the galaxy's DNA. And once a tragedy reshapes the entire narrative landscape, it cannot be repeated or surpassed.
Thank you for watching. Be sure to like, subscribe, and hit that share button. My main channel is Critical Analysis Hub, where I post Star Wars content about the movies. My secondary channel is Critical Analysis Hub Plus, where I focus on the shows of Star Wars. And my third channel is Critical Analysis Hub XP, where I post comic books. Be sure to take a moment and check them out. Thanks, and may the Force be with you.